Aaron, it's always great to spend some time with you and get your perspective around what's top of mind for sellers and sales leaders. And today we've got a gem of a topic, something that I don't care who you are. If you're in sales, you're going to grapple with this from time to time. And it's all about how do we get deals unstuck, or how do we get around or grapple with being ghosted, which happens to all of us from time to time. Would love to get your perspective on this hot topic.
Yeah, it's funny, Carson. This is something that we're facing a lot, more and more. When I grew up starting in sales in the '90s, where did this word "ghosted" come from, right? Isn't that interesting? That word has kind of become a cultural phenomenon for us here recently. But yes, I think getting deals unstuck is one of the most frustrating things for a rep. Is we're not hearing back from the prospect. And it's been a week, it's been 2 weeks, and then you start analyzing why is that. So really want to discuss that with you today to get your thoughts, and then share a few tricks that I've picked up as well, and where we're seeing some movement on my sales team with some different tactics that we've been trying. So, but let me turn it back around to you just to kind of kick it off. What are your thoughts like for your team when you guys run into this? Like, where do you start? Do you start analyzing, your process up to that point in the deal to see, did I miss something? Did I not define the decision-making time frame? Right? Is there that goes on? Do you start driving and pushing harder? Do you start pulling back more? Like, where does that go for you?
I love that. And I will say too, my philosophies on this have probably changed or evolved over time. A lot of it comes down to the table setting. We've got to control what we can control throughout the process. The table setting and how you can proactively try to avoid this type of scenario. We got to realize, and you can look up the statistics, but we lose momentum after that initial meeting. For every day, for every week that passes from that initial meeting where we were all mutually fired up and we believed that there was an opportunity to break bread and do more together. For every day and for every week that passes, there is a loss of momentum. Other things pop up. It's not because of there's any malice intended, but things pop up, right, on both sides. And so, when we are doing our follow up or we're just checking in or whatever, I think the key element is we've got to be very upfront. We've got to be very intentional about how we agree on these key milestones and these key priorities. So you can do some of that in the early going. Don't ever do any guesswork. You want to make sure that you confirm up front that you're working with the power, with the influencers. You want to also make sure that you understand that this is truly a priority and that they see the alignment. And then otherwise, you also want to understand any key milestones and timelines. Because at the end of the day, when it comes back to these scenarios where there's a stalled deal, you're going to have to hark back to that early conversation, and you're going to need to make sure you're outlining, hey, Mr. Mrs. Customer, when we talked in April, you indicated that this was a key initiative for XYZ timeline. You've got to have this delivered by November. I've got resources allocated for this. Please let me know if I need to continue to hold on to those resources or if I need to put them onto another project. Because what you've done there is you've reiterated, hey, this is feedback that you gave me. Because of that feedback, I'm allotting resources. But there's also got to be that fear of loss attached to it, as far as resources that you have allocated. But look, we all have things that we have to do. Is this still a priority? So these types of things can really help if you understand up front that when you have momentum, you've got to seize it. You've got to be diligent and disciplined in follow-up. I'm a big believer in daily non-negotiables. So I go down every day before I get sucked into the minutia and the emails and the IMs of every day. I go through like my top 5 daily non-negotiables. And it's usually going through my list, going through deals, going through pipeline. Is there something I need to do to impact here today? Now, some of these things can prevent stalled deals, but no matter what you do, every once in a while, because you may be relying on somebody to do your job and sell up in their organization, and you're not dealing with the power, or you're not really understanding what budget or timeline looks like, there are different variables that can cause the deal to get stuck. And I think in those types of scenarios as well, you've got to work with what you can, but I've also found that if you're only working with 1 or maybe 2 people in that organization, it's important to create a groundswell around what you're trying to do. So I also try to rely on reaching out to other folks in that organization to see what's possible and where might there be some additional synergies. Because if you're truly at the pulse of that organization and you know the priorities from the horse's mouth, and you're able to say, go back to your original customer, hey, Mr. Mrs. Customer, in my other conversations in your organizations, I'm hearing from this person and this person and this person that this is a priority. There are ways that you can kind of force yourself back to the top. But I think one of the key elements here too, Aaron, is we don't want to be twisting in the wind. I would rather have a yes or a no. Because if I have a yes or a definitive no, I know how to allocate my time, which is my most precious resource. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, boy, that's just really good stuff right there, right? And I love the way you kind of set that up. And for us, I think that recently I've been doing I teach negotiations at Clemson University in the MBA program, and one of the things that I've stumbled across a couple of months ago was an interview with London Real by Chris Voss, right? He was interviewed by London Real, an excellent 2-hour interview. And when you unpack that clip, right, of that interview, Chris Voss gives some nuggets in there that we've actually started using on our sales team that has turned into real dollars for us. So one of the things that I want to bring to the table is the power of no. So one of the things he says in there that, we need to stop trying to get our clients to say, our prospects to say yes. Okay, that's the problem. And I'm going to give an example of what I mean by that. Okay, instead, we want them to say no. Now, when you hear that initially, you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. That's counterintuitive for us as salespeople. We want that yes. Okay, yes, we're ready to move forward. Right? If you think about the types of questions that facilitate the ghosting, we're constantly asking yes questions. Hey, is this something that you're wanting to wrap up by Friday? That's a yes question. Okay, are you ready to move forward? Okay, you told me that it's next week when you're going to make a decision. Is that correct? Yes. Like, and so when you study this, what Chris brings to the table is, yes, when people hear those questions, then you and I are the same way. We realize that the hook is being inserted into the mouth, and we start to ask ourselves, because we know they're trying to get a yes out of us. We start to ask, what am I missing? We start to feel a little bit unsafe. We start to feel like we're being sold, and so now we're starting to reluctantly say yes. It's harder and harder to say yes. It's easy for people to say no. Why is that? They feel safe when they say no. They put you back, or they feel in control when they say no. So what we do is, what we found is we flip the question. So let's talk about closing a deal first, and put the ghosting aside for just a second. Even just in the sales process, in the email, or if you say this on a call, what we found is, are you against moving forward and signing the contract today? Now, what did I just get you to say? No, I'm not against it. Okay, great. Right? Or would it be a bad idea for us to look at a demo of the product and just do a review of it before we go any further? No, Aaron, I think that'd be great. Let's do it. Oh, I just said no. Okay, so I'm reversing the question, because clients prospects love that. They feel safe by saying no. Here's one for the ghosting. And I got this off of Brian Burns' podcast. I thought it was fantastic. It really does work. Have you given up on? Okay, so I'm telling you, when we started using that about a month ago, 90% responses within like 5 minutes. Like, I'm talking deals that have ghosted for weeks, immediate email responses. Okay, because the way it hits the brain, because it's a no question, it facilitates a response, because no one wants to give up or feel like they're giving up on anything, right? So when I email you and it's been 2 weeks and the deal's sitting, and I say, Carson, have you given up on this project we've been working on? Okay, within 5 minutes, you're emailing me back and you're probably saying, no, we haven't given up on it, but. Right. So I got the no, okay, and then I got the reason, and then I'm like, oh, he came back to life. He resurfaced, right? My goal is just to get you to resurface, right? And give me that status. And then why I got you, you reply to that email immediately, why I have you. Okay, don't let it sit, and say, okay, well, walk me through, where we need to go from here. Or would it be a bad idea for us to do this next? Well, no, it wouldn't. There's another no. Would you be against this? Would you disagree if we did this? Okay, all no questions. Okay, and that again makes them feel in control, very safe, and it advances the deal. Okay, so we've also used that when we've had some ghosting and the deal's ready to be signed. We're ready to send out a DocuSign. Okay, and we just simply email the client, say, are you against signing this today and sending it back to us today? And client replies and says, no, go ahead and send the paperwork. We get it back signed. Okay, and normally we would answer the other way. We would ask it, hey, would it be possible for you to sign this and get this back to me today? That's a yes question. Turn it up on its heels. Are you against it? Right? Are you against me sending this to you today and having you sign it? No, I'm not against it. Go ahead and send it. We'll sign it. See, so the yes insert hook, like they feel like there's something about the yes, right? So it's the power of no, not the power of yes. That is translating into real dollars. Just that whole psychology of that, Carson, for our team. And it's something that I really wanted to share with the audience today because I just think it's highly, highly intuitive and highly powerful. And that psychology of way it hits the brain. Your thoughts?
You nailed it. Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, look, it's first off, it flies in the face of what I think a lot of us are quote unquote conditioned or trained to do, which is why, in my mind, it's so successful. Because you got to realize that a lot of our executive contacts, they might get dozens, if not hundreds, of emails from sellers every month. And they all sound the same for the most part, which is why a lot of them get deleted, shunned, blocked. And so I think anything that you do that is the opposite of that, or kind of that counterintuitive approach, is going to give you a leg up because it doesn't sound like everybody else that's getting that deletion. And so same thing comes with prospecting a lot of times. You know, I always tell sellers, when you're reaching out and you get a common rejection or response to something, doing something different, doing something even slightly different can make all the difference in the world. A lot of times it's just small tweaks to your process.
Right.
But what you've embedded here all falls into the psychology of it. Because you're right, nobody wants to be sold or sold to, or in this day and age, there is more now than ever a focus on, I've got to get it right. And as a decision maker in the organizations that we're working with, they have to get it right. This is very personal to them. And so people are more risk averse than they've likely ever been. So it's important to make sure that you show up in a way that you're looking to deliver wins, but that you're doing it at their speed. You're doing it with what they're comfortable with. Now, it also, at the same token, makes it all the more important that we understand what are their priorities. They're going to go with you if they feel comfortable, and you've earned the right to be a trusted advisor. But I mean, it starts even with the prospecting. You know, how are you reaching out? If there are common objections that you're getting, how do you turn those on their head and, you know, fashion a new approach with your outreach? I remember years ago when I was starting to prospect within a new role, and a lot of times I would get this response because I was reaching out to different line of business owners, and I would get this response of, hey, you're one of the bigger checks that we write, and I don't necessarily want to buy more. Or we would get the response like, hey, you need to be working with this department. Well, that wasn't my goal. I didn't want to work with that department. I wanted to create relationships across the business. And so trying to take a different approach of, the reason that I'm reaching out is I represent the relationship that we have with your organization. You're entitled to resources as a result of your significant investment. I was just trying to get the meeting. And what I loved most about what you said, Aaron, is you're focused on trying to resuscitate a lead, not necessarily close the deal right out of the gate. So that approach with, the psychology behind it and, utilizing it not to get a yes response, but to get a no response is absolutely brilliant, because all you're trying to do is get them to reply. I don't need to close the deal right there in that email. People aren't going to just respond and just send you the PO. The key element is keeping the conversation alive and determining, is this a yes or a no? Because maybe so's don't pay the bills.
Yeah, you said something that's really good. You talked about risk. Here's what I've found, 24 years of leading sales teams, that risk is usually one of the number one reasons why a deal stalls out or doesn't move forward is personal and professional risk. Okay, there's something that as salespeople we have to tag on and latch onto, and it can cause a deal to go silent, which is there's risk that's being felt by the other side, and we're not really attacking that feeling. We're not listening to the other side. Remember, the other side wants to be listened to and respected. Okay, remember that most people aren't listened to all day. So imagine when you get on a call with them and you actually listen. So when you're speaking, I sit back and I'm actually listening to you. That's refreshing, and you feel respected and listened to. Okay, and then we want to dive into if the deal is stalling, or if we're reading it and it just seems like we're not getting to second base in the deal. We want to attack that risk, right? So sometimes even if it goes silent, attack the risk in your response, right? Talk about, hey, you might send an email, say, listen, if I were in your shoes, I'd probably have this concern, and this concern. Okay, I see the potential risk from your side. To give you an example, we just did a deal last week, a software deal, a large software deal in our company where, I put myself in their shoes, in the prospect shoes, and looked at it from their perspective. And I started looking at the payment plan. And I started saying, you know what, the way we have their payment plan set up, they're spending all this money before they even implement it, right? Because they're not going to implement it till next spring, okay, after tax season. And I'm like, but they're going to invest all this money, right? So that is risky. That feels risky, even to me. So I told my rep, I said, let's go back and let's propose that we modify the payment plan, only require 25% down. We'll do the rest next May after they implement. So that way they feel less risk aversion up front. Well, that was it. That was the golden ticket, right? Then the firm came back and said, yes, thank you. That really moves this deal along, because I just don't think that we're concerned about this investment for this product. We want to make sure it works and we like it and we're happy. And there was a risk aversion. So it kind of stuck the deal there for a few days and for a week, and we weren't really moving forward, okay, because they were worried about the amount of money they were going to come out and spend. So I think that that's something that we certainly need to attack, and can really, I think we miss it sometimes as reps, where we're not assessing the risk that they're feeling on their side. We're not looking at things from their perspective. What we're doing in our negotiations is we're making arguments, okay, and we need to stop making arguments. We need to start listening to their side, to their what they want, to their perspective. But too times as salespeople, we start making arguments. This is why you need to do this, and this is why you need to do this, instead of listening to what they want and looking at their risk from their perspective. So I really appreciate you bringing it up, because I thought that's very intuitive, very insightful.
Well, so much of this comes from leadership and training as well. We have to instill this in our sales cultures, right? That comfort and ability to understand the other side of the table, right? I loved how you did that. And so, just right off the cuff in my mind, I'm thinking about questions like, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, would it be a bad idea for us to come back together and look at the deal from your perspective and de-risk this as much as possible? Or, yep, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, would it be a bad idea for us to come together and make sure we've armed you with everything that you need internally to feel confident presenting this to leadership? Things like that take that counterintuitive approach, because here's the thing, where we falter a lot of times as sellers is we present something, we think it sounds great because we've been instilled by our company to believe that we're selling the greatest thing since sliced bread. Mm-hmm. We list off everything that's great about it. And yes, it may or may not strike a chord with a customer. But the thing is, they are someone in their organization that has to be an advocate for this, has to evangelize for this. And if they're not fully prepared to do it, and there is risk implied, believe me, they're not going to go out on a limb in their organization to hitch their wagon to this deal that's going to get you paid. You have to care genuinely that this is a win for them. I've got what I like to call our holy sales trinity. You've got to make sure that the customer, your company, and you and your team benefit from every deal. Well, your customer is the key component of that. If they're not going to win in this deal and they don't have that perception of win, and the perception of risk outweighs that perception of win, guess what? They're not going to move forward. And it's a lot easier for them just not to reply, mm-hmm, as it is for them to just come out and tell you no. And that's why I love your approach so much.
Yeah, I think that's another thing I found with this, okay? And this is a topic that you and I could do another day, but on personality matrix and personality styles, right? There are 4 of them. You have an analytical, you have an expressive, you have an amiable, and you have a driver. So you have these 4 personality types, they all fit into these 4 quadrants, okay? And, we all are predisposed primarily to one. Some of us flex into different ones and have secondary, okay? But assess the other side of the table and who you're talking to and which personality box they fit in, for an example, because it impacts the way they buy. So if I'm talking to an expressive, Carson, and an expressive person is very emotional and they're up one, down day one, and down the next day, they typically have buyer's remorse, right? Because they feel differently the next day after they bought it. And they're like, I shouldn't have done that. They want their money back, right? Or they're the people that want references. They want people to tell them good things. They want to feel good about the purchase. So if I'm talking to an expressive, to move the needle, I need to speak their language. I need to flex into that personality style, think like they do, okay, to move that deal along. So I want them to start feeling good about my product. So if the deal stalls and I'm talking to an expressive, they don't feel good about something, I need to attack that. Okay, so I would write an email that says, sounds like there's something that you don't feel good about with this deal. Okay, would it be a bad idea for us to discuss it? Now we're going to get a response, right? Because the feeling part, and all of a sudden the expressive who likes to talk for 30 minutes and about baseball and everything else comes back to the table and says, yes, yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Right? If I'm talking to an amiable person is somebody who hates conflict. They can be wishy-washy, back and forth, up and down. I don't know if I want to do this or not. They care about what other people in their team think about the product. How does this impact everybody in my team and in the company? They want congruence from everybody inside the organization, but they're indecisive and they hate conflict. They will avoid it. So these are the people that will not return your email and tell you no. Like, we've decided to move in another direction. Or, hey, we're just not they don't want to tell you. What they hope is that you just go away, because they don't want to deal with conflict. They don't want to offend you. They're afraid you're going to take it personally. Okay, so they just go away, right? So with that amiable person, making them feel safe, right? With a no question. Okay, coming back to them and saying, hey, it sounds like, your team was not on board, right, or with the solution. This isn't really impacting your organization like maybe we thought it would, that you have concerns around how it's impacting your team. Would it be a bad idea for us to expound on that a little bit more? And I give the amiable person permission to say no by saying, you do have my permission to say, quote, no, and not move forward if this doesn't make sense for your company. We were just looking for a decision one way or the other. I want to make them feel safe. And what I found in those cases, Carson, is a lot of them emailed back and said, yes, we have decided to move another direction. Sorry I didn't get back to you. And they just feel protected that they can say that, but at least I got an answer. Sometimes the amiable person will go back and say, yeah, we did have some concerns on the team. I've been busy. I just haven't had a chance to get back to you. Right? Would it be a bad idea for us to talk next Tuesday at 2 to kind of go into that a little bit deeper and address those concerns? Right? So based on that style, I'm able to flex my style and really use my no questions, but I need to assess the other side of the table where they fit in that personality set. The best people to talk to are drivers, because they're just decisive. They're like, hey, sounds great, Carson. Let's go ahead and send me the paperwork. Let's get it going. We all love selling to drivers, okay, but we don't always get those. Right, so I think that matters too, is making sure that we are really doing a better job of analyzing that other side in our fact finding and in our sales process. What type of person are we talking to? And when they go silent, we need to kind of adjust our response to what we perceive that type to be.
And the bar is raised right now for sellers. I can go out and I can research my buyer, and believe me, they're researching us as sellers as well. And understanding what matters to them, being able to read company reports so that you know what matters when they deliver an earnings report and they've highlighted what's top of mind, where are areas of focus. These are all things that should inform how we show up from the get-go, how we show up during the sales cycle, and how we continue to develop and nurture that relationship. And I love what you've highlighted, Aaron, because these are changes, these are tweaks to our process that we can make. I hope people can see that, look, there's never any silver bullet when it comes to selling. However, it's all comes down to the words you choose to use and how you make your customer feel. And if you are able to de-risk that decision for them, and you've clearly shown how they can win and you can deliver a win for them, with them, that's how we all win.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll say this as well. We've got to be careful that we don't state the negative. What I mean by that is, we often say that when we respond to prospects or clients and saying, hey, you probably get a lot of emails like this, from a lot of pushy sales reps, and I'm not that person. Okay, well, when you state it that way, they're automatically thinking you are that person. Why even state it? Right? You're stating the negative, okay, and you don't want to word it that way. That just puts that in their head that, hey, why even say that if you're not that person? Right? Well, I don't want to be like everybody else and push you here. But then why say it? Okay, so we have to be very, very careful when our responses with that as well, because as salespeople, we're also guilty of doing that. But But I think if we apply some of these things, I wanted to share it with you and make sure we get it to the audience to say, listen, let's try Chris Voss's tactics and approaches, because I think he's onto something, a former FBI and terrorist negotiator, right, who use these tactics, right, in the field, and they consult businesses now, and they're getting a lot of traction, and it's working for my team, where we're flipping that psychology, and we're making people feel safer in their purchasing, and we're analyzing their buying patterns and listening to them and respecting them and looking at their personality matrix, all of these things in our responses, and we're getting more responses. So anyway, it was a great discussion. Really interesting to hear your perspectives as well. I think you made a lot of great points.
Always is, Aaron. I always appreciate our chats. I look forward to the next one, and you've given me some stuff that is going to inform some of my future actions. So thank you for that, as always. Thanks for the time, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Carson. Appreciate it.